So folks, today we are taking a look at another new camera. This is the Nikon Z5 II. A solid and in many ways very convincing camera that I personally enjoyed much using over the last weeks. So let's get started. I'm David, you are watching DAVISION in English, and let's go. Nikon's Z5 was released in 2020 and was a very successful entry into full-frame mirrorless for Nikon photographers. I have some experience with the first Z5 myself, as my friend Michael owns one and we've already done several lens tests over on the German channel with the Z5. Although there was a downgrade in the sensor compared to the Z6 II, many could overlook this as the camera offered a very good value for the money, which still stands true for today for under 1,000 euros new. However, 5 years is a long time and a new edition was overdue as a lot has happened technically in this 5 years. The new Z5 II now costs 1,900 euros. And so it's pretty close to what a Z6 III costs after a year with all the rebates and the reduction in price. But the camera targets a slightly different buyers group. This is mainly because a different sensor is used in the Z5 II. The Z6 III has a fast, partially stacked sensor that allows for super fast continuous shooting range. The Z5 II on the other hand does not place much importance on this. The 24 megapixel sensor here is quite a classic one and not super fast, but still an upgrade compared to its predecessor. It's using a BSI arrangement sensor, a backside illuminated sensor, which should improve for better dynamic range and better noise performance compared to the first Z5. So let's take a look. Essentially, the Z5 II is a Nikon ZF in a body similar to the Z6 III. However, instead of a display on the top, the Z5 II has a mode dial and the shooting modes has to be controlled via the menu settings or the quick menu. There's also photo video switch as you know it from Nikon, and otherwise it uses a very familiar body design with very good Nikon typical handling. All the buttons are where you would expect them, including both the FN buttons on the front of the camera near the lens mount. And the camera fits very well in the hands. It is minimally lighter than the Z6 III and also slightly lighter than the first Z5 with almost the same dimensions. With continuous shooting, a maximum of 15 frames per second RAW is possible with electronic shutter of this camera. But rolling shutter might be a problem for birds in flight or fast moving sports. However, mechanically, up to 14 frames per second are also possible. That's quite good in this price range. This is still a top value for mechanical shutters in current mirrorless cameras, as the Z6 II has already offered 14 FPS. And with mechanical shutter you don't see any rolling shutter artifacts, so everything remains undistorted even if it moves fast. If you only need JPEGs, the camera can also shoot up to 30 FPS electronically in the C30 mode. With RAW images, the buffer was filled after 8 to 9 seconds of mechanical shooting at 14 FPS, despite the camera only writing to slower SD cards. There are again 2 slots with UHS 2 speeds and no CF Express here, which should be sufficient for most people in this camera buying class. But what about the image quality of the Z5 II? I was very impressed with the ISO performance. Even images with ISO 25600 could still be used without much noise or even color cast. They are absolutely fine. That's really neat. And the dynamic range is more than sufficient, as you can easily brighten an image underexposed by 6 stops. And as always, overexposing is a bit tight. Even with an image overexposed by just 2 stops, information in the bright areas is still lost when recovering. Compared to other cameras, this is good, but not outstanding. Compared to the Z6 III, it's better, as the faster, partially stacked sensor has less dynamic range than this classical backside illuminated sensor in the new Z5 II. In practice, I use the Z5 II for portraits, for cityscapes and for landscape photography over some trips and over some portrait shoots. Overall, I was very pleased with the camera and captured some very nice shots. For portraits, the biggest advantage of the new Nikon camera is Nikon's new autofocus, which offers much better subject recognition, tracking, eye detection than older models. like the Z6 II or Z5 could. The processor in the camera is new and it's the same as in the Z6 III or even Z8. And so it can provide the autofocus of the other cameras. Even Bird AF is here. Still missing from the Z6 III, it is here in the Z5 II. But this is not a super fast wildlife camera with great continuous shooting. In practice, however, the 299 autofocus points on the image sensor can be sometimes a problem. That's simply much less than Sony, Canon or even Lumix cameras offer on their sensors, and as a result, in practice, it often comes to eyelash autofocus with portraits, meaning the camera recognizes face and eye and shows it on the screen, but because of the focus point is quite large and coarse, it focuses on the eyelashes instead of on the eye itself. This is particularly noticeable with lenses with a relatively small depth of field at close distances, such as Nikon's 35mm 1.2, and would likely also be noticeable with a 85 1.8 or even faster lens. Will Nikon get this under control? I hope so. I don't know, but with normal lenses and a greater depth of field, it's not so much noticeable. And I even didn't notice this with the Z6 Mark III, even if I shot very much more portraits with this camera and they have the same kind of autofocus arrangement on the sensor. And I have already criticized the number and the coverage of autofocus points, especially like on the Z6 III. It's no longer comparably good to any other brand, but they are sticking with it for now. This means that this autofocus is actually much more capable in terms of tracking, subject detection and following than the camera can deliver due to the point count used and the coarse size of the autofocus points. By the way, if you like my style of videos and watch them regularly, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. It would help me enormously on my way to grow this English channel. Thanks everyone. What I really liked on the Z5 Mark II, it also inherits the sensor image stabilizer from the ZF and from the Z6 III. The first Z5 already had IBIS. But the new one is better and offers some interesting new features, such as the ability to stabilize around the focus point instead of just the center of the image, since this makes much more sense. And additionally, the Z5 Mark II can now also take pixel shift images. In this process, the sensor is moved pixel precisely within the camera body on a tripod to achieve an image with a higher resolution. I used this, for example, for my German review of the Nikon 35 1.2 and it worked very, very well. However, it can only be done using a tripod, not handheld with Nikon cameras. There's not much to criticize about the camera's photo functions for this price, except for the eyelash AF. Yes, maybe it's a feature, not a bug. But for video, the Z5 Mark II offers a lot. Especially things you wouldn't expect from a camera in this price range. The 4K video up to 30 FPS is recorded from the entire sensor width and downsampled for very good detailed 4K image and excellent low-light performance as well. Way better even than with the Z6 III. The camera also offers internal N-Log for a flat color profile with higher dynamic range if you select the 10-bit HEVC codec. Both not possible in the predecessor like a Z5 I or even a Z6 II that can do this just externally. And even 4K at 60 FPS is available in this camera. Then, as usual with these types of sensors, with an APS-C DX crop, which is perfectly fine in this price range. Little crop, but quite good quality for slight slow motion. And you can even record 120 FPS in full HD from the sensor. Although the image quality is not as good then. It's still usable for short slow motion clips, but nothing outstanding. What surprised me, however, is that the Z5 Mark II can even record RAW video internally on its SD cards. Okay, no other camera can offer this so far. However, the RAW video is not read from the sensor's full quality like compressed video, but records 4032 by 2268 pixels up to 30 FPS from the FX frame, which means lines and pixels are skipped. I don't know who needs this in this camera class, but it's there for you when you want to use it? Okay. The classic sensor design is not particularly fast in any means, meaning you will sooner or later see rolling shutter effect with movement of the camera or movements in front of the camera. This is no surprise, but 22 milliseconds readout time for a 4K full frame image is not bad either. It's like the Lumix Z5 II. For 4K 60, we are talking about 50 milliseconds readout time for the smaller sensor area, which is necessary for 4K 60 FPS and should hardly cause rolling shutter effects. Compared to the Z6 III, the Z5 Mark II does not have any analog noise problems or issues with its ISO performance. Even with analog, no thing here. Both, which are still quite big questions in terms of the Z6 III's video capabilities. What the Z5 Mark II does very well, however, is video autofocus. Like all the new Nikon cameras basically. I used it here in the studio with the 35 1.2 for some talking head videos and was very impressed with the camera's performance. The eyelash autofocus doesn't matter for video and isn't visible in 4K video at all. For video, the Z5 II is nearly as well suited as, for example, a Lumix S5 Mark II, which is in a similar price range, except that Nikon unfortunately doesn't provide open gate video capabilities. But Nikon even have waveform displays, and Z6 III and Z8 even have shutter angle as exposure modes brought to them via firmware updates. Maybe the Z5 II gets this as well? Would be helpful. But externally, the Z5 Mark II has some advantages over other cameras. For example, a 3.2-inch display with 2.1 million dots. Pretty nice. For example, you won't find this in any other camera in this price range, and while it may seem as a small difference on paper, it's noticeable in practice. I noticed this compared to the 3-inch displays on my Lumix cameras, compared to, like, for example, the 3.2-inch display on my Canon R5 II and my Sony a7R5. It's quite a difference in outside use. Unfortunately, the viewfinder does not offer the same quality and brightness as the Z6 III's, but there must be some differences in these cameras. You will also find differences in the connections. The Z5 Mark II only uses a micro HDMI port, and for me to use it, I first had to look for a suitable cable since I haven't used this in like 6 months. But at least there are separate ports for headphone and microphones, and I didn't hear any strange noises from the microphone input jack in the recordings like with older Nikon cameras. The battery can be charged in the camera via USB-C, but it's very slow with a maximum of 10 watts. And it's an EN-EL15C battery used here again, as Nikon uses always. But battery runtime is also as expected, close to camera, like I said, the Lumix S5 Mark II. And all in all, the Z5 Mark II is a very solid camera, both in terms of photo and in video functions. There's not much to complain about. It's not shiny or very cool, but it's a pretty damn good value for the money. But in terms of autofocus, I would like Nikon to get this eyelash AF under control, but otherwise I don't know what to criticize here. But no camera is completely perfect. If Nikon is your system, and if you are in for a new Nikon or want to go to Nikon, you should consider the Z5 Mark II if it meets your needs. Even as an entry point into mirrorless full frame, this is pretty damn good. Competitors in this price range include the Lumix S5 II and, with discounts, the Canon R6 Mark II and possibly even Sony's a7 IV. Although it is inferior to the other mentioned cameras in many ways, as my comparisons over on my German channel have put it in the past multiple times. So you can't go wrong with the Nikon Z5 II if it has to be Nikon and an entry-level full-frame camera. Only the price needs to come down a bit over time, as the price reductions and rebates on the Nikon Z6 III may make it more interesting again, and it offers some advantages in terms of continuous shooting, video features and general features, such as a way better viewfinder, CF Express card slot, 60 FPS 4K without any crop, and even ProRes video internally. But also feel free to tell me what is your opinion on the Nikon Z5 II. Would this be a camera for you? Write it down in the comments below under the video. If the Z5 II is exactly right for you, you can find links to the camera below the video in the video description. And if you buy through these links, you support this channel here free of cost to you and ensure that I can continue make such videos for you. If you like the video, please leave a like under it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you don't want to miss anything, please hit the bell. Here are 2 other videos that you can watch next, because that was it for the vision for today, and let's go.